Don't forget to subscribe to Basement Tales. Just go on Apple, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts and hit that subscribe button. We release a podcast every Thursday. That way you'll be sure not to miss an episode. Welcome to Basement Tales with Sam Jackman, Charlie Einsman, Ed Grass, and Sandra Delancey. We have fun telling crazy but true stories about turning the worst possible property disasters into bags of money. Along the way, we'll pass along some important lessons to help you make cash on real estate. Sam and Charlie walked away from cubicle hell 25 years ago. Starting with no property, they created their own Clear Sky group of companies, sold hundreds of houses, bought dozens of rentals, and made millions in hard money loans. I'm Ed, a big firm litigator until muscular dystrophy made me find a hobby other than suing people. I miss it. Sandra's the normal person here with a real job plus some rentals. Her decades of friendship with the group, from office flunkies to property gurus, might help keep us all humble and focused on learning something. I wouldn't count on it.
All right, so I don't think Sandra's joining us today because we haven't heard from her, but we do have some interesting subject matter for Basement Tales today. There are 6 major pitfalls with flipping a house that you can encounter that Charlie's identified. He's going to throw them out there.
Are not a problem.
He's going to throw them out there, and then we're going to tell stories about them. Charlie, throw the first one.
All right. So, but Ed, unlike your cabinets, these are hidden distressed issues, right? These are the surprises that we all come across, because a lot of times when buying distressed inventory, you don't get a peek inside. So like if you're buying at the courthouse steps or, from a wholesaler or this or that, a lot of times they'll take pictures, but you don't get a chance to see inside. So we've identified 6 problems, hidden problems. And so the first one is foundation. And so, Sam, you want to tell a story or two about
foundation? I've been told that that's a legal term as well when we were in court, that, object based on foundation. But in this case, foundation is water coming through your foundation, a giant crack through your foundation, like something like that. Your house settling upstairs in ways that don't look normal, where the house is lopsided. We've had all of those things. So your foundation, if it's leaking, we've had that where the water shoots through the wall when it rains, you have to dig out your foundation. You have to fix that from both the outside and often from the inside. You might have a huge crack, or it may need to be waterproofed again. And if it's an older home, older than 30 years, the basement sort of, that old black stuff they painted on goes away. And now they have new technologies. They put like it's almost a plastic, like a beehive type barrier the water transits through down low. So there's different things you can do to waterproof them. So you can have those kind of problems, which are pretty bad, but the worst ones are when the wall's all cracked. And sometimes it's concealed by drywall or paneling up in an old house. You pull it, you're wondering why the house is like wonky or the floor is a little lower. And then you get to the real renovation, you pull off the paneling or you pull back the problem area and you find that it's cracked, and you have to go from there, and you have to maybe even reblock the whole wall and things like that. So it can be that's concealed. That can be pretty concealed. The water is not so concealed, but a crack in your foundation, and then a good home inspector will find it when they go through the house. So you need to fix it before you resell it. You can't try to gloss over. If someone finds a big crack in the house, they're not going to be okay with moving forward with the contract. So thinking you're trying to conceal stuff.
Yeah, one of the houses that we owned, it was on Roanoke Street in Woodbridge. I don't know if you remember that one or not. We had four houses on Roanoke. Yeah, we had a monopoly on Roanoke Street in Woodbridge.
We had a hotel down there.
And so one of the things that we had to do was in this one particular house, we had to reblock 2 walls of the foundation in this house. And so our contractors had to jack the house up and then reblock it before they let the house back down. Remember, they raised the house on the joists not the joists, what are those things called in the basement? Those poles in the basement and jacked it up.
Yeah, yeah. They put them on like temporary.
The
Uh,
lolly columns, lollies, right?
yes,
LOLLY
Yeah.
yeah. They're metal, and then you jack them into
Yeah.
place, and then
for concrete.
level up the house and reblock it. So that's one hidden horror. What's another one, Charlie?
All right. So but that foundation job took about 2 or 3 weeks, didn't it? If I remember right.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
That's money. That's
yeah.
money because it's a lot of labor. You got to dig it all out from the outside, and you have to support it, and you have to do it safely. You don't want to drop the house.
And that costs more than your $200 an hour lawyer.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That was my question, was a little bit, how do you find this concealed problem? I guess a good inspector, or you can maybe infer it because floors are sagging or whatever. But what's the price range of, so if I'm buying at a foreclosure, and I can see, I'm diligent, I check the house from the outside, but I get a hidden foundation problem, and I'm sure it varies on the house size and the problem. But how much damage could I have for a? I mean, everything's fixable, right? Probably,
Yeah, sure.
but are we
30
talking?
grand.
Yeah,
30 grand for like a medium sized house to
mhm.
do a wall, do a couple walls.
Which could pretty much kill your entire profit margin.
Yeah, that's a margin killer right there for
Oh,
sure.
for sure. And like Sam was saying earlier, the problem isn't the exposed block in the basement. It's where you either have the wood paneling up, the Vince Einsman wood paneling that these old folks like, or
Yeah,
you just
yeah.
have drywall hiding any kind of foundation problems. That's really where the hidden issue on that comes in. And so yeah, that's issue number 1 out of 6. The next one,
What you got?
the next hidden one, and this is pretty important, is well and septic issues.
Oh, that's worse than the foundation issues.
Yeah, that's worse than the foundation. So a point that you guys need to take is that if you're buying a house in a rural area that's on well and septic, and that property's been vacant for, I don't know, let's say 6 months or more, you had better make sure that septic system is inspected, because we've seen a lot of cases where the septic is absolutely destroyed, or it doesn't work. Maybe the distribution box doesn't work, or the fields are just so old that they need to be replaced. And so we've had 2 problems that I know of in the past. And the one was on Brentsville Road. And then the second one was, we bought a property in, was it Nokesville or was it Warrenton? I think it was Warrenton, right? Because it was Fauquier County. So we bought a house in Warrenton, but we actually bought a house from a referral. It wasn't a foreclosure sale. It was a realtor referral, and it was in Warrenton. And we went ahead and rehabbed the house. We sold the house. But when we went to sell the house, the inspector said, "Did you guys know the deck was built on top of your septic field?"
We said, "Oh, it's not on septic."
We said, "Oh, it's not on septic." So the buyer really loved the house, really loved the renovation. And so the buyer agreed to buy the house. Thank goodness. We had a pretty good, well, we thought we had a great profit margin in there. So the buyer buys the house with the contingency that we would move the drain fields. And so we moved the drain fields after closing.
And it wasn't a small task. It was not modern. The drain field wasn't a modern drain field, so we had to upgrade it all.
Yeah.
And it was about $40,000.
Yeah.
40,000. Wow. Well, here's another one where I'm such a suburban kid. Like, I had heard the concept of a septic system. I had no idea, and so I just assumed everything had plumbing, except if you're out like in rural Arkansas. But I guess there's a good bit once you get out of, the exurbs, I guess you're talking about septic. Now, let me see if I'm understanding this right. You can have a septic tank where all of the waste goes, and then that has to be pumped out. That's the only. But what you're talking about is
it distributes out into a field.
Right.
Most septics have the tank, and that tank doesn't get pumped. It just distributes out into a grassy area.
Right, basically like little pipes just distributed so that underground, if all goes well, you don't know anything's going on. It doesn't smell. It just gets absorbed by the
Right. It's
plant.
it's below the frost line. It doesn't smell.
Right, right. But so yours, it was some crappy, no pun intended. Not the leach field was not where it was put. It's supposed to be kind of away from the house, downhill, or whatever the
They used to
case.
allow for very small ones. Now they make you have literally twice the size.
Hmm.
So in that case, we couldn't put twice the size in to replace the old one, and the old one was completely trashed. And we had to do an advanced system that pumped it up a hill and cleaned it and did this and that.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So the problems, I guess there could be problems with the tank, right? The tank could be leaking or old. The leach field could be clogged or whatever, something bad. It could be mislocated. And so anywhere from like maybe pumping the tank to get it restarted to actually replacing everything. What would it cost to do a brand new septic tank and leach field? Is that
20 grand in like a normal circumstance
mhm.
and 40 to 60 in extraordinary circumstances.
Yeah, like what, 20 for the conventional, right? And then 40 to 60 on the alternate system.
Exactly. And then a lot of timing. We
Yeah.
did one where we had to do a new drain field, but the new drain field was too close by the current measures to the existing well. So we had to drill a new well as well.
Because they said the well was too close to the house.
Right.
Too close to the drain field.
Oh, yeah.
Right, because
Sorry.
that's why you would have a bigger drain field so that the bacteria or whatever gets absorbed. You don't want it going into the groundwater or into a well, which is basically groundwater. And then, is there any now? Obviously, again, like you just buy something at a foreclosure. There's not much you can probably do. But if say you're buying something, trying to get a deal to flip it, or buying from a wholesaler. Is there any way that you can check this short of a full-on like home inspector?
You could check with the county about the records, but look, if you're buying a house that's vacant and it's 30 years old and it's on a septic field, all odds are the thing is going to be damaged, and that you should probably buy that one. Go to the next house.
Well, like Sam said, the biggest problem is that you're buying them as is, where is. So we're trying to have you avoid hidden problems, right? So if you're buying it as is, where is, you might want to, make sure you get a septic inspection. But a lot of times people are going to be like, we're not giving you any inspection. You're buying this thing as is, where is, or else we'll go on to the next buyer.
Right.
And
the whole
so
idea is a fast sale in that situation, even if it's not therefore somebody's got to leave. I'm leaving. I'm selling this. That's how you get the good deal. But then you're taking this risk about whatever issue is. Huh.
Yeah. And this has happened to us both on the purchase side under, for our fix and flips, but it's also happened a couple times to our hard money clients. And we've had one of these hard money clients on one of our podcasts in the past where he was crying over a property in Stafford that we lent him money on. And he was so mad that his profit margin got sucked up because he needed a new septic system at the last minute. And so he had to do the same thing, promised to put in a new septic system post-close. He closed on the deal, but they had to escrow like 30 grand for him to put in a new septic system. And he's still not happy about that experience.
I bet. Well, I guess, I was going to say the one way to protect yourself, I guess, is by buying multiple flips. I mean, if
that's right.
Well, and here, like, if this house was in 1970 in Nokesville, it's probably got a septic system and the odds are high that it's bad. If it's in closer in Loudon and it's from 1995, you got a better shot statistically. Yeah. But then I guess the other thing is if you buy 10 of these houses and you get one dead foundation and one septic and you have enough profit margin and it's okay. Even Steven, it's going to be good.
That's right. I mean, when we were doing a lot of houses, 50 a year, you pick up some real, alligators. Yeah. But if you're just doing onesie twosies, then you have to be very, very cautious. Right?
You do. Yeah. So, all right. So
what's the next one?
All right. So foundation was 1. Well and septic is 2. The next one is our favorite word, mold and rot.
Mold and rot. Okay, rot is not as problematic as mold. Mold is
mold is gold, right? Mold is gold.
Okay, so here's the thing about mold. If you know about the mold and you need to resolve mold, do not believe anyone that says that they can give you a partial resolution to mold by treating one area. because they will chase that mold around your house. You'll have test after test after test. If you have mold and it's in more than one place and you can't quite locate it, the only thing to do is to stop with all the testing, stop with all the remediation companies, and demo the whole damn thing. Every space, including the ceiling, everything down to the studs, and then spray it with antimicrobials, and then dry it and let it all be settled down. And then when nothing is left standing, test it to see if there's mold. Because chasing mold, I think it's in the one room in the basement. I think it snuck up into the closet upstairs. This is a trip to nowhere. You'll spend a year trying to track down the source of the mold. And I know this from personal experience, hoping to save money at every turn. It's just $4,000 to do this room. It's just $3,000. We'll clean the HVAC. No, if you have real mold, like the black, dangerous, deadly mold, you can't have any of that mold in your house. You can't have a spore of it when it's tested.
So tell them the story on Rock Court of one of our nice hard money clients. They were so nice to us.
They had a decent house.
They went ahead and gave us the house back.
They had a decent house. They had renovated it 80%, 70, 80%. And then they got into a fight with each other, these two owners. And so they wouldn't finish the work. Well, it come to find out that the sump pump in the basement went out. Now, sump pump's $100. You can change it. It doesn't even take a skilled laborer. Any handyman can change it. But they wouldn't have anything to do with each other, and they wouldn't check on the house any further. So they let that thing fill up like a bathtub full of water, and sat there for about 6 weeks before they decided that they would just give us the house. So when we got that mold box,
well, the county found out about it. Don't you remember? The county found out about it, and the county put a report in that said it has mold and that it needs to be remediated for us to continue forward. We couldn't just do what Sam had recommended earlier: tear out the drywall, throw it all away, spray it down, and then just move on. We had to do a full-blown mold remediation. Yikes.
And what we could have done then is remediated by tearing everything down, and then testing, and then being certain that it's resolved. But what we tried to do was a remediation where you call someone in, they identify the source of the mold, they remediate that area, but we had multiple companies, multiple trips, and in the end, we just had to tear it all down and to get at it. And it would cost us probably twice as much and took way longer and way much more frustration than just starting from the beginning with the idea that sometimes you get an alligator and it's not going to work out. You just can't save money with mold.
Well, you have
nowhere to save.
You have to mitigate your loss the most effective way, basically. It may hurt to put the money up front, but if you don't, you're going to pay it and then some later.
Right.
Yeah.
But on that one particular house on Rock Court, again, in that particular case, we didn't lose any money. I mean, I think we made a few bucks off of our principal anyway. We certainly didn't make a lot of money. If we were to do the loan as normal, let them fix and flip it, and then we get paid back our interest and our parts and all that. I mean, we didn't lose principal, but we did lose opportunity costs. And then the last one I'll bring up, Sam, you're going to like this one, is there was a property that we owned in Dale City, and we had it for a rental for the longest time, and we went ahead and renovated and sold our rental. And so the first buyer came through there. They were a good buyer, it was a good contract, and they did a home inspection.
Oh gosh.
And so they tried to tell us that, you guys have mold in the attic and that you need to do a mold remediation. So we said, the hell we don't. The hell we do have mold in the attic. I don't know what you're talking about. I said, the attic probably has a lot of moisture in there, and it's got a lot of weather changes. It's going to have some things in there, but we are certainly not going to admit that we have mold, and we are certainly not going to do a mold remediation. So the realtor got really angry with my partner, Sam, over there. And if you're going to get angry at Sam, nobody gets angry at Sam. They get angry at me. But they got all pissed off at Sam, telling him, I'm going to report this, I'm going to report that. We were like, forget that, man. Just let us out of the contract. We're going to go ahead and resell the house. And that's what we did. Because under no circumstances are we going to go ahead and allow anybody to do a mold test in the attic. Because I think that maybe 90% of the attics might have mold.
Yeah, well, the attic isn't living space.
This is what I
Huh?
wanted to raise. Actually, in the distant past, I worked for an insurance company, and I dealt with insurance claims related to mold and other things. And I learned enough to understand there's mold, and then there's mold. Like there's
Right.
mold
Exactly.
everywhere. There's mold on your
Yep.
bread. It's not going to kill you.
Mhm.
The mold's
Yep.
penicillin. It's actually can be good. But
Yep.
Stachybotrys, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. That stuff will kill you. That's some bad
Yeah.
mold. So,
That's the
so
black. Is that the black?
that's the black bad
Yeah, the
mold. Although
black.
I
Right.
think some molds can be black and are not that dangerous. So like if you do a
It's
mold
true.
test in any house, like my house is 20 years old, you probably get some kind of hit that there's mold here.
Yeah.
But the question is it dangerous mold? And where
Right.
and so here if I had it, you probably could track it down and do whatever. But okay, let's say like the common one is the basement being flooded, right? Even I've seen that where the basement had a problem, it's flooded, there's clearly mold there. Is that enough that you would immediately say, well, obviously you rip the basement down to the studs, but would you immediately do the upstairs as well? Or would you think, well, maybe
Oh
it's
no,
enough?
no, no,
Well,
no.
well,
It
no, no,
depends on
hold
the.
on. Well,
Okay.
it depends on how far up that mold has creeped in the
Uh,
basement, right?
mm,
So if the mold has creeped up, and we're talking black mold, and it's creeped up to the ceiling in the basement,
It's over.
yeah, we'd probably have to start ripping out floors on the next level above it, right? Rip out the drywall in the basement, go to the floors, rip that shit out in the
maybe
main
see
level, and
if
go from
it's
there. We've had that happen many times in the back in 2007, 8, and 9 when we were doing a bunch of REO listings. That was prevalent in a lot of those
Oh
REO houses
yeah.
because they had let the power go off. They didn't turn the power on for six,
it's
9 months.
sat.
They
Hmm.
went through a lot of weather changes, plus sump pumps not working. And that thing was a mold. A lot of those properties were mold boxes. And so that happened on quite a few of those guys.
So what are you saying? Let's say you've got a three-level townhouse or a small single family, and you have to take out. So you're saying take out when it's really bad. You take out all the drywall. Do you take out the flooring, the subfloor, the plywood? How far do you go?
You know all the way to the plywood. That's sufficient. You can clean off the plywood, and if you have a townhouse with it, then and it's a newer townhouse where it doesn't have block walls between the two units, you have some
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
significant risk
Yeah.
because now you're molding your funky
Yeah.
house is
Yeah.
molding your neighbor's house
Yeah.
because their walls may need to come down too.
So you have
So there's a
liability
lot,
issues,
there's liability issues.
damn
But that's all
neighbors.
terrible. Charlie, what do you got next?
Yep. All right. Next hidden issue, and this is another important one, are and I'm going to categorically call it water leaks. But really, what we mean by that is, and this is really important because if you're buying a house, especially in December, January, or February, and you're buying it maybe an REO property or that house has been vacant, the most important thing that you need to make sure, though, is that this house has been winterized. Because if the house is not winterized, then you're at big risk that once that water gets turned back on, the pipes might have froze and then they'll burst. And Sam, I don't remember an issue. Did we ever have that issue on any of our kitchens?
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. There was one I remember in Dale City, and they must have had a dozen pipe breaks. There have been many actually, because normally when we go in for a full renovation, and that's a component of it, we'll just do the repairs as they find them. But if it's not too bad a renovation, you really end up spending a lot of more money than you would because you have to open up every wall. When the water starts flying out of the wall, you got to open up the wall and fix the pipe where it's broken.
Uh-huh.
Unless you're going to just replumb the whole house, which is the whole nightmare unto itself. So
Right.
hidden pipe breaks, if the house is frozen. Also, if you have a house with a sprinkler system, they treated it the same way.
Yep.
They just left, or a swimming pool. Oh, you get into some real money repairing those problems.
That's right.
So that's serious. If you're buying a house, it looks okay in the springtime, but it's sat all winter with no power and no winterization. Then you're in trouble.
And how do you know? And so the question probably is, well, how do you know if the house is winterized? Well,
they'll tag it.
Yep. Number one, they'll tag it. But a case like in our case, like if it goes to a foreclosure sale, my fellow bidders would like to go ahead and rip that tag off the front door so that you guys don't know that it's been properly preserved, right? Property preservation companies come by and they tag the house. Well, my guys will rip off those tags so you don't really know. So one of the ways you know is if you can get into the house and of course it's vacant, just look at the toilets. And a lot of times they put chemicals in the toilets themselves. And so that's kind of a surefire way of knowing it's been winterized.
We'll tie off the valves with zip ties too.
Yep. So they'll do stuff like that.
Water
So now this is more prevalent though in single family houses that are more subject to the elements. Townhouses, maybe not so much the interior townhouses because they're kept kind of warm by their adjoining neighbors. So maybe not so much in townhouses, but definitely single family houses. You've got to be cautious of these pipes that if they haven't been winterized could be frozen.
What else you got on terrible things?
Is there anything happy today? I mean, is it just all sadness?
And the only happy moment is when you sell these places.
Okay.
And then you're, I made a little money.
That's like day one when you get the boat, day two when you sell
it. So true.
All right, number 5. And I don't know off the top of my head if we've had any of this. I think maybe one time. Asbestos. That's a big
yeah. I mean, you have to test it. People will say, oh, that's an asbestos ceiling tile or an asbestos floor tile. You don't really know if it's asbestos until you send it in, and then they send back the results and tell you the percentage that's asbestos.
Unless it's marked. So, I was in a house once where the wall board was literally stamped John's Manville, and it was from the 50s. I was like, it's asbestos. I mean, there's no.
Well, older pipes, and the older pipe wrappings are often asbestos, or have to be assumed to be asbestos because of the age of them. And the solution for asbestos, I mean, beside calling in a company to put a tent over your whole house and take it all out, is enclosing it. And that's something that you don't need a genius with all kinds of certifications to do. If you have an asbestos pipe that could be contacted and you enclose that whole area in a non-asbestos material where you can't become in contact with it, well, you're moving towards a resolution right there, because if you can't touch it, you're not going to get sickened from it.
Well,
it's not circulating in the air and whatnot.
This is another way back into the early 90s. This is when I did the environmental claims, and the technical term, and this is relevant for lead paint, which I'm wondering maybe on your list or not, or maybe with asbestos, is to encapsulate it. That asbestos is only dangerous if it's friable, if it's coming apart. If it's sitting there, it's not going to hurt anybody. So, and there are companies that will encapsulate it properly. They can find it, but it may not be that complicated, as you say. It may just be some pipe wrap. But of course, and it's risky. You don't want to, you think, well, I'm an entrepreneur, I don't care, just rip that stuff out. And now you make it friable and you start sucking down some asbestos fibers. That ain't too good. Yeah. It's not good for you. And
if you think you have asbestos.
Yeah. Right. And I think on the scale of the best to the worst of these hidden problems, I think asbestos has got to be the worst if you need to do an asbestos remediation. Right. That's a lot more costly. That's a lot more costly than a mold remediation.
We haven't gotten to that. I had to have that horror.
Yeah, we've never had to have that yet. Thank God, knock on wood. And so, so I did say there were 6 issues, and so actually we'll add the 7th issue, and that's what you just brought up. Ed, is lead-based paint, and that's prevalent in houses built before 1978.
You can see that when you see chipping paint in an old house, a house built in the 50s. And never been painted. That's chipped. That's lead paint, just guaranteed. So, lead paint can be tested for pretty easily, not too expensive, and it can be easily resolved as well. Generally speaking, you paint it with another paint that binds to it and covers it entirely. And
I don't think we've had
any. It doesn't lose.
But have we had any? I don't know of any property.
I sold a guy's house, and he tested. It was a 100-year-old house, and and they came back with lead-based paint, and then the remediation was a licensed contractor, just a paint contractor, goes in and covers it with a binding lead-based paint remediation type paint. And
but that contractor has to be certified.
They can retest. They can come back.
Oh, okay.
And retest.
So it doesn't matter. Okay.
And I think some of the reason it may not have been top of mind for you guys is, as I understand it from that old info, it's not as bad in the DC area for whatever reason. They didn't sell lead-based paint as late. Baltimore is very well known for lead paint, and even what would happen, it wasn't like it was, they took it all away. Like people had paint left over. And so you could get something painted into the 80s that could have lead-based paint.
Sure.
They
Oh,
weren't
wow.
selling it at the Sherman-Williams store, but Baltimore is famous. Maybe the timing the houses were built or whatever, that is like top of mind. Down here, for whatever reason, the stuff I've seen, even that's old enough, I mean, A, a lot of the stuff here is not old enough, but B, the stuff that is old enough, I haven't really come across it that much. I don't,
Yeah,
so,
that
but
makes
No, not
sense.
much.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do hear a lot of rumors about Baltimore in particular, because especially when you're being a landlord in Baltimore City and Baltimore County, man, they're really sticklers for these
Oh,
lead-based
yeah, because a
certifications.
lot
I
of people
mean,
have been injured by it, children in the
yeah,
Baltimore area.
well,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
an
So,
insurance nightmare because a lot of policies exclude coverage for that injury and who
yeah,
gets hurt. It's not like a 30-year-old person; it's a 5-year-old
It's
right.
a
kid
child. Yeah.
who eats a
Yeah,
couple of these chips,
They eat that
yeah,
pain.
and
yeah,
then
Damages their mind.
the chelation therapy is
yeah,
painful apparently to get rid of it. And as Sam said, it's a permanent injury, so you're talking like
Yeah.
a lifelong claim.
yeah,
So yeah, exactly. It's one of those things that maybe not be that common, but you don't,
yeah.
and you guys care about selling a good house. You don't want to sell somebody a house
No.
full of lead,
No,
No, you don't want
untreated
to
lead
sell many
paint.
of these problems. You got to,
no, we don't. Well, no,
you,
well, yeah, but this is all for the fix and flippers and the wholesalers of the world and people that are buying properties as is where is. I mean, they got to know about this stuff. And so
Ex-
that brings me to
yeah.
the final. That brings me to the final hidden issue, and that's electrical. And when I talk about electrical, I'm talking about the older houses, the houses that have old aluminum wiring. They might have
Mm-hmm.
the knob and tube wiring,
Oh,
right?
wow.
And they might even have the old two-prong outlets. So
Oh,
you've
yeah.
got to be very careful as well. And the one thing that comes to mind with us, Sam, is the house that we had in Falls Church that had the
Two
two-pronged
prong.
outlets that we
We,
had to go ahead and rewire that entire house and
yeah.
make it rewired. And we've had to rewire a bunch of aluminum
Yeah.
housing,
And
especially in
some of the
DC.
old Dale City, Virginia houses have
Yep.
a very particular panel box that's known to
Yep.
catch fire. And
Yep.
then if that's identified during a home inspection, they're always like, oh, you got to replace your panel. So if you have a really old panel,
Yep.
uh, if you have aluminum wiring, if you have
Yep.
two prong, anything that's a fire safety hazard, you can count on you're going to have to redo that. That's
Right.
all there is to it. If you don't have GFI in your
Yep.
bathroom, people just don't even care that whatever your story is, they need that for their own
Oh, that's
safety.
the other thing too, is the GFIs. When did the GFI requirement even start?
No, I don't know, but if you don't have it, I mean,
Yeah.
fortunately now you can just change the plug and make a GFI without wiring the whole
Yeah.
house or something. But
Yeah, and I
there's a
know.
lot of fire safety stuff that's got to
Mhm.
be cautious about.
Yeah, just so people don't know, that aluminum wire literally can light on fire.
Yeah.
And if you have a fire from another source, basically it sends fire through your entire house. So
Mhm.
it's a bit of a problem. But what is it? So what does it cost? Again, what kind of damage am I looking at? I go, oh crap.
$2,000 for a new panel,
Mm,
probably, and then
mm,
if you have to rewire, it just depends on the size of the house. And
mm.
Yeah.
then usually the problem is not the wire itself,
The
but
two prongs.
the damage that's caused by
Yeah.
running that wire. You're going to have to redo all the drywall and where you had to cut it open and run the wire, and so it's a hassle. It's not like you're doing it on a new house, so it could be $12,000 for a small house to rewire the whole house, because you have to get behind the walls and then paint it again and all this. So like if it was $8,000 to just do the wiring, it'd be another $4,000 to fix it up.
Yep.
Where your wiring was.
Yep.
Repaint.
And all these hidden problems. I mean, that could make you from having a decent profit margin to maybe breaking even to even losing money, especially in this.
Horrible.
Yeah, especially in this day and age where these guys are overbuying tremendously on properties to fix and flip because there's no inventory, and they're just bidding the profit margin almost out of it to begin with. So if they come across anything hidden, man, they're pretty much hung out to dry. They better go ahead and rent it out and pray the market goes up even more.
Yeah, the thing about getting labor right now, these kind of projects like, come in and fix some sort of strange electrical problem, or rewire a house that's already built. where there's a lot of cutting and extra work. That's the job they're not going to take. Like the electrician has a choice. So I can go rewire a panel and do a new panel quickly. No, you not even pull a permit or whatever, or I can deal with your entire electrical nightmare. No one is even going to come over. They're just not going to have it. They don't have time for that when they're choosing between jobs.
Well, and their risk
unless you already have. Mm-hmm.
It's there. If they miss a couple things, they do everything right, but they miss a couple things. Whereas, yeah, a new panel in a new house, it's pretty straightforward for them what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, when they tell you, "Oh, it's going to be $10,000," and you freak out, that's not much fun either. So it's a lot.
That's
of
right. You're resistant to the price, and you don't factor in the risks that they have to take to maintain a license because they're not just hacking it together a couple plug sockets. It's pretty serious.
Yeah, but and the other thing that you're susceptible to is that, remember, you're buying wholesale and you're selling retail, right? So anytime you're buying wholesale, off market, whatever, but then you got to sell retail. And so most cases, when you go to sell retail, guess what you need? You need a home inspection for that buyer. And so anytime you put a home inspector in there, that's what his job is. A lot of these guys like to show off and find as many problems as possible. And sometimes they're major. And so you got to be careful when you're going from the wholesale to retail model, because that home inspector is not your friend if you're selling a house.
Yeah, they're going to find all the retail problems.
Yeah. And then you if you're not really well connected to contracting community, these kind of hidden ones are extremely expensive to resolve. They're already expensive when you have a good contractor. But if you have either a bad contractor or don't have a contractor, you're in real trouble.
Well, and if everything's all sealed up and then you have to start again, it's going to raise the cost. You see these fly-by-night flippers and fly-by-night home sailors, and they think they're going to get one by on somebody, which A, is just wrong if you're talking from a moral standard, but B, if morality's not good enough, you're probably going to get caught. And if all that means is, okay, the house is all beautiful and painted and ready to go, and they say, okay, now you got to rip out, 4 walls because of wiring problem, it's going to cost you a lot more at that point than if you just fix the damn thing up front, as painful as that may be.
Or if you get a project in mid-project, we've had this before too.
Yeah.
And this will be my last horror tale. You get a project that's in the middle of the project and no permits were pulled, and it seems like it was done okay, but you still need permits to finish the work. All the work needs to be inspected. And so what do you do with concealed work? An inspector is not going to just look behind a plug socket. They're going to want you to either x-ray the wall, or they're going to want you to get a licensed engineer who can come in and attest that he's evaluated it and he's certifying with his engineering license that the thing meets a standard. And not many people are real interested in getting paid $2,000 to confirm that some house done by a non-licensed contractor is in good order and safe. There's just no way. There's real problems if you're like middle stream of a project and go pull permits. You might have to go pull open those walls. We've done that plenty of times.
God, I'm not to belabor this, but you just brought back a nightmare basement tale that I had put out of my mind, which was a house in McLean that they were fixing and flipping and they failed on, and it looked okay. I mean, there's no kitchen or anything. It looked okay, but what they had done is they did all this plumbing work and they closed it in and hadn't gotten the permits or whatever. And
big house.
And had to get some kind of plumbing expert, pressure dude, and x-rays, and it was just like, oh my God, because the only other option was literally rip a pretty good sized house completely down to the studs to find all the plumbing. So
it was a nice home. It was a nice home.
It was a beautiful home, but actually that does show you his knowledge is good, right? Because I would have just assumed, well, I'm screwed, I got to rip it all open. But there are sometimes specialty solutions like that where maybe it cost $3,000 for this special review, but that was a freaking bargain compared to the other option of going down. And then it was all approved by the county and everybody was happy. And so we can end on that happy tale. Sometimes you can.
That's a good happy tale. It's not even a basement tale.
Yeah.
That's right. It's a whole house tale. It's a whole house tale.
Well, thanks, Charlie. Those were good.
Yeah.
Thanks for. I'll be having nightmares tonight. I'm going to have my nightmare. I'm in a house with lead paint, and then when I'm remediating that, I'll find asbestos, and then
Yep.
there'll be the aluminum wiring will light on fire. We haven't even
Yep.
talked about FRTP plywood, so I better shut up.
That's
Oh,
old.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
that's another
That's
one.
an old one.
There's
Oh,
other.
All
yeah.
right.
In the
Other
poly
hazards.
pipes. Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we even talked about those. There's some other topics.
If you like these things, and we've had all of those too. If you like this, subscribe. Listen to us. Send us a question. We'll
And,
see you in
yeah.
Basement Tales.
Yeah, and if you even have a good story for us, we love to hear these good stories or bad stories, but tell us how you solved the problem. Your story at basementtales.com with 2 T's.